Alright everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil. And we now have roughly 11 days, I think. Is it 11 days of this era left? So we have roughly 11 days, less than 2 weeks left in the anniversary era. And we're going to look at kind of the positives and negatives, kind of give our overall feedback. Now that we have all of the characters, we've been through a lot of the changes. There are absolutely some parts of this that I think they knocked out of the park. Some things that I felt went really, really well. There are definitely some improvements I would like to see made in the next era, and I'd argue will probably get made. And just some, again, I think sometimes when we analyze this game as a content creator, you need to be able to give constructive criticism that you take away maybe your personal feelings of, oh, I don't like the, this or this or this. It's like, if we can step back and try to look at this with a, clear mind. And I think that's why I wanted to do it now is just kind of look at this and say, hey guys, for next time, here are some things to consider. Here's what I enjoyed. Here's what I did not. Let me know what you guys think. I feel like this is a necessary video, kind of an era in review. How did it actually end up after the way that it started? So let's get in here and let's analyze this anniversary era. Now again, we're only talking about like Coliseum and the Marquee here. We're not talking about Relic 10. We're not talking about Relic Delta. We're simply talking the changes that were made here. So let's just start with the Marquee process. Again, minimal change from what it was. Every 2 weeks you get a new character. Again, the difference being now it's contained with a different kind of leveling system in eras rather than legacy. I felt this is a great change. I think this change was brilliant because it's giving players an opportunity to progress their account while also progressing the legacy stuff. We talk about this a lot when you're trying to catch up in this game. One of the biggest problems a lot of players have early in the game is all of these new units just make it harder and harder and harder for them to catch up because it makes their bottleneck of Kyrotech, shards, gear, that much more challenging. Giving players hey, you're going to get, if you're free to play, they said you're going to be able to get these characters to level 65, which will get you to gear 12. That is free, 300 free Kyrotech for every single unit here. If you are, I bought the episode pass, I'm at level 75. I skipped all the way to gear 13. And this was something I was curious about when I was buying the episode pass. I said, I am curious, will this get me enough to relic, get those characters to relic levels? So if you are someone where you were thinking about buying the pass, is it that beneficial? One area I will say that if you are in this point in the game, being able to get relic characters is huge. That's gear 13 gear in your pocket. That's more raid materials that you can use towards Zimbatal cards and Electrum conductors or additional legacy characters that you can relic because you didn't have to spend it here. So definitely a lot of positives there. I'm a big fan of them kind of separating that gear so that way you can continue to progress here while also progressing here. I think that's a very, very good change. And I think incentivized players who never would have spent on the Marquee structure here. There's a lot of people who spent on those characters that would not have done it in the past, because in the past, when we think about, say, the Bad Batch here, right, we go to the new batch, there was very little incentive to spend on these characters because they're a good team, but they're not a great team. There wasn't a lot, like if you're in the newer part of the game, wailing on the new batch really wasn't as important as trying to wail and get Kylo or Rey or, another galactic legend. So there was a lot less incentive to build their stars. And on top of that, again, you'd still have to go and gear them, which was a whole nother problem. Where now, because it's again, a separate system, there's players who felt that incentive to wail because even if you have Maul, right? Even if you don't have the Stranger, you're going to get Maul. But the incentive was also the rewards in Coliseum. By placing better, you could get the Relic 10 materials or you could get Lightspeed tokens. And again, I've talked at length, I mention it all the time, how valuable I think those Lightspeed tokens are for players. It opened up this whole system. You could say, oh, it's greed. Listen, they found a way to get those players who weren't spending on characters to start spending, and whether that's related to Relic 10 or Lightspeed tokens, it's a bit of both. So I felt that was a very smart and good decision. I think this was a good step in that direction for the future of the game, is to open up the Marquee system to, hey, spending isn't just going to get you the character. It's not going to get you these little bit of rewards. It's also going to get you stuff here, and I really liked that. Hats off, CG. This was a fantastic part of the update. Now, one negative just has to do with the characters themselves. It's kind of a positive and negative here. The positive is it's helping a lot of teams that needed it. You know, Stormtrooper Luke, IG-90, like none of them are actually going to get used in the same team, right? Not a single one of these characters will be used in the same team together. But it is helping a lot of different teams, which I'm always a big fan of. But because Coliseum, you're using them together in a team, it felt at times that a lot of their kits are missing. You know, while it's great that we're getting, you know, these one-off characters, inside of the era system, the one flaw there is there's a lot of parts of their kits that we are missing. For example, if you go to IG-90, right? When it says something about if Dr. Aphra has, you know, again, stacks a siphon, like, okay, well, Dr. Aphra isn't in the leader slot. Or this, if Aphra is in the leader slot, call other dark side droids to assist. There's one, you can't have Aphra in the leader slot, so that's a problem. And, you know, again, so you're missing a big part of that kit. Or, you know, for Asajj, for example, it has a part if Boba Fett, Sana Jango is in the lead. Well, that's not going to happen. So there's just certain parts of these kits that are significantly missing because they were all kind of random, jumbled messes that I think would be far more beneficial if we got to see them in their actual purpose. And even for like Inquisitor Barriss, one of the big things is, you know, she is the 3v3 Omicron. Well, it'd be nice to be able to figure out how that, obviously we're not going to figure out how that works, but it'd be nice to kind of get some sort of indication of what that will look like, and we just don't have that. So this particular era of Anniversary, yes, while it's great we got all these random characters to help some teams that need it, in putting them into a team and using them in Coliseum, you can definitely tell where the gaps are and where it would be nice if there was more synergy around these characters to really get the full feeling of what it is. I don't know that that will exist in the next era because, again, we're getting Andor characters. The question I would have is, will it be, like, how many of those, like, will it be 2 straight eras of Andor where one of them is Empire and one of them is Rebels? Or will it be 3 Empire and 3 Rebels, and how those will play off of each other? I will be very interested to see that. You know, because again, if it's just say it's 3 Rebels and 3 Empire, or 2 Empire and 4 Rebels, you're going to have an odd person out that maybe it doesn't work, or you need this specific character. So again, just kind of looking ahead and thinking to ourselves, the next era will probably be a little bit better, but depending how it gets split up, it's not going to be perfect. Now, maybe it's never meant to be perfect, but it would be, you know, again, with 6 characters, someone's got to get left out somewhere. But I would be interested to see how that could play out. And that's going to kind of play into my next negative here, which is the limited number of attempts. You get 5 attempts. So there's not a lot of experimentation that you get around these different bosses. And even to an extent, you very realistically, like for example, there's certain times where like you might get, 10 attempts with the current set of characters. Now their levels might change, but like every 2 weeks you're getting a new set of characters and stuff. There's very little room to figure out the best team at times, or there's very little opportunity to, you know, test something. And I think part of the problem that I have as well is if you retreat, it counts as an attempt. I don't like that. I think the way this should work personally is you get 5 submitted attempts. So if you think about the raid, you go into the raid, you get a score. If you don't like that score, you can just forfeit, right, or back out, reuse the team, and it doesn't count against you. I think that needs to be implemented here because there is a wide amount of RNG when you're fighting these things. There's a huge amount of, do you get vulnerable right away? Does this happen? Does that happen? You know, resisting debuffs or a dodge. And I get that RNG is part of the game, but I've said for a long time with SWGOH, they need to do a better job in certain instances of rewarding players who actually participate with the content, and not just players that, and you got to walk the line, right? You got to reward the people who spend, but someone who uses all 5 attempts and learns the strategy to get better score than someone who maybe spent money, like that's important. You want people engaging with the game, because if they're not engaging, then it's not really working the way that you want it to, right? So I think kind of rewarding that engagement to say you could back out, resubmit your score, I think that would be really beneficial. Get rid of some of that just like random RNG where sometimes like you'll go into it and I know it's going to be a bad run from the start, and you still got to play through it on the off chance you get lucky, and it's like, this is just wasted time that I could restart and try to get that start that I'm looking for. Again, nitpicking a bit, but I do think that would be nice, that at least let it be a submitted score and not just a, yeah, you get 5 runs and you're done. Speaking of, RNG, we talk about the leaderboards, and part of this being you get placed into a shard for 3 months and it'll reset. But just to compare something here, so here's my shard. So I am 19th with 491,000 points in tier 8. So I'd love to know where you're sitting. What does it look like for you? I'm sitting there. My 10th place is 798,000 at level 10. Level 30 is 404,000. And level 50, the last one I can see, is 180,000 points. So I'd be curious to see where you guys are falling there, kind of do some comparisons. And the one comparison I do have here, I'm going to switch over my screen so I can share Wombat. So he sent me a screenshot of where he was here. So we're going to flip over here. So Wombat, this is Wombat's screenshot. He scored 636,000 on tier 7. And he is currently ranked 48 at the time that the screenshot was taken. So you figure him placing 48th with that score comparative to mine, where you need to be in tier 8. So that's a significant difference in the reward structure, where maybe in my bracket, if you're not in tier 8, you're not going to place in the top 60. Which you think about the rewards, that's you're losing it might only be 100 currency, but think if that's happening at every single level, that's kind of a big deal. So I've talked about that reward structure. I think they need to place more incentive on the actual points that you're scoring rather than necessarily your rank, or at least try to make them a bit more equal. And that way you get rid of some of the RNG of what kind of shard that you're in. Again, if you're trying to incentivize players to spend money that, hey, it is worthwhile, what if you get placed in a bracket with a bunch of guys from, Call Patrol that are going to spend and get everybody to level 85? You're willing to spend to say get to 80, but you're not getting the same benefit as somebody who maybe only had to go to level 80 and is placing top 10 because they don't have the, whales. You get what I've said that. You get where I'm going. It's something they could fix for next era to try and work the rewards to be more based around the points you're scoring rather than necessarily the, where you're ending up in your specific bracket. The next thing for the era system that I also would say I felt worked well is the the currency, the materials and stuff. As it went on, you got more and more and more, which I felt was really nice. They did, it was ample. It wasn't like you had, you felt that bottleneck at times. And at times you could be like, oh, it's super annoying, but I actually appreciated that. I appreciated that at certain times I did feel that crunch, because I think that leads into what sometimes is, can be missing, where there would be nothing more annoying, especially right now with, era currency. I would be so frustrated if I had all the stuff that I needed, but I'm missing, a particular piece, right? So I felt like the bottleneck between materials and era currency kind of matched itself pretty well. I did not spend any extra. I think I did one time very early on in the game, and otherwise very early on I'd won like 300 crystal pack, and that was it. I felt like those bottlenecks worked really well as someone where I'm not spending a lot of extra investment into this. I had to pick and choose which levels to go to. I enjoy that. I appreciate that. It's one of the things I do like about this game, is kind of making some of those decisions, trying to, go even across the board, experiment. I thought that was good. Some people may not like that, but I felt that bottleneck did seem to work and have a more, I don't want to say fun experience in the game, but it felt better than maybe what we've had in other, what could have been, right? The final thing I'll say, just as a overall wrapping up of the era for next time capital games, I think a couple key points I'd like to bring up just related to the communication of the era. You talked about, hey, everybody's going to be able to get to level 65. I think a lot of players, myself included, would have appreciated to know how long that will take. Similar situation with level 75, just kind of giving a more clear blueprint as to, if you spend this amount of money or do this or do this or do this, this is where you can expect to end up in the era. I think that would have been really helpful for players. I understand maybe releasing that information, people might not have spent as much money, but maybe it would have had people spend more. But I felt like, at least, even if it's just the free-to-play side, hey, if you're free-to-play, level 65 will take you this long to get to, right? By the time you get here, if you've participated, this is where you're going to get. I think that's fine, right? That would have at least helped some players who maybe spent money or spent crystals, not recognizing that was going to happen. It was just going to take a certain amount of time. The next point I would bring up has to do with the Maul event, right? We haven't talked about this yet. The Maul event, again, say what you want about whether it was boring or whatever. My one thing here was the rewards. They gave out 5 total Kyber Lightspeed tokens, 2 in tier 1 and 3 in tier 2. I think there should have been communication that was part of the reward structure. It baffles me that it was not, actually, because I think that was an incentive to try to get him for players, was, hey, maybe you don't have the stranger, but you can get Kyber tokens, which are friggin' awesome. I feel like that should have been communicated to us. And I hope for next era, that is communicated. And I say this for 2 reasons. If next era, they're not in the rewards, people are going to feel cheated. They're going to say, well, I spent because you gave me these Kyber tokens. That was a part of my cost of why I did this. So I think that needs to be, communicated to us. And if you're going to give them again, I still would say just communicate it. Just let us know. That communication, I think, could have been really important, because there was a lot of ambiguity in certain areas, and I felt like that could have been really good. Finally, just with the, the battles for the era, I probably would have appreciated it a bit more. While it did seem like it was iconic moments, of using Stormtrooper Luke, using Chewbacca, again, the Vader fight I saw a little bit of. I do think I would have appreciated if it was more about Spider Maul, right? Like the whole thing being Spider Maul rather than just these characters, because they're not related to Spider Maul. If it was, hey, you're going to use Savage Press and Night Sisters and stuff, sometimes I feel with this cinematic feel of something, like if I'm participating in the Maul event, I want to use and walk through the events that he took me through, and not necessarily the Stormtrooper Luke one that we could have made into an era battle. Again, I know that sounds very nitpicky, but that's just honest truth from me, right? Constructive criticism for, this system moving forward. Otherwise, I think I'm going to say mostly positive, some things that I think could be improved, but overall, I think they hit this out of the park. There's more players playing than there has been in a while. Spending is up significantly, and a lot of that, I think, is due to the added incentives beyond just getting characters, that it's separate from legacy content, and there's additional rewards to get that really, you think, everything you're earning in Coliseum, everything you're earning here is I don't want to say use the term free. It's bonus from what you were getting before. This is all bonus from what you were getting before. Because the Marquee system here, right, the Vader missions, like, this stuff is all the same, right? You're still getting the same rewards we always got here. This did not change. They added, legacy materials, right? But, like, the other stuff in here did not change. The era stuff, is what's new. And we're using those things to earn additional rewards here, right? So I think when I look at that, like, this whole thing is all basically added bonus rewards. And I can't say that I'm not a fan of that. So thank you guys for watching. Like, subscribe, comment. I love you all. May the force be with you. And I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, my friends.